Yellowstone National Park is home to the world's most famous supervolcano. The area surrounding Yellowstone is full of geothermal features such as geysers and hot springs, but it's also home to three massive calderas, which are the telltale signs of three enormous volcanic eruptions that occurred over the past 2 million years. The largest of these, the Yellowstone caldera, formed after an eruption approximately 640,000 years ago. While its eruption was so big that it's considered one of the deadliest in history, it was also one of the rarest. That's because it was a super-eruption. A supervolcanic eruption isn't defined by the height of the ash cloud or even the volume of ash produced, but by how explosive the eruption is. To qualify as a super-eruption, a volcanic eruption must have a volcanic explosivity index, or VEI, rating of 8. The VEI is determined by measuring the volume of the eruption column, the height of the eruption plume, and the amount of time over which the eruption occurs. Ash from the Yellowstone supereruption was deposited across North America, and the eruption column likely reached about 45 miles into the atmosphere. But the explosion wasn't all at once. Instead, it occurred in discrete pulses, making it even more deadly. While scientists believe the death toll was minimal, with perhaps only a few thousand people losing their lives, this was largely due to the fact that there were no humans around at the time. So what if another supervolcano erupted today? How would the world deal with the impact of such an event? Yellowstone isn't the only supervolcano out there. In fact, there are at least 12 known supervolcanoes scattered around the globe. These include Novarupta in Alaska, Mount Mazama in Oregon, Long Valley in California, Mount Vesuvius in Italy, and Krakatoa in Indonesia. But these are just a few. Together, these supervolcanoes pose a serious threat to humanity, and we can't just hide away from them because some are simply too widespread to avoid. Take Yellowstone, for example. If it erupted again, much of the western United States would be decimated by falling debris and pyroclastic flows. But even those living outside of the immediate vicinity would be affected as well. Hot ash and gases would shoot into the atmosphere, eventually circling the entire planet and blocking sunlight. But why does this happen? What makes these eruptions so large? A typical volcano is formed when molten rock called magma pushes its way to the Earth's surface, creating a cone-shaped structure as it cools. Over time, as more and more magma is added to the mix, the volcano grows taller and taller. Magma chambers form beneath the surface as the magma collects, and the pressure increases until the magma erupts. However, supervolcanoes are different. Rather than being caused by the upward push of magma, supervolcano calderas are typically created when magma chambers get so large that they collapse. This happens because the roofs of the magma chambers literally can't hold up the weight of the material above them. As a result, instead of building up over time, supervolcanoes are characterized by massive downbursts of energy. When this occurs, the ground literally blows up with tremendous force. This explosion is often preceded by earthquakes and changes in the frequency of volcanic activity. In the case of Yellowstone, the last supereruption was not a single event, but rather a series of discrete events that occurred over a period of about 1,000 years. Between 680,000 and 630,000 years ago, the supervolcano rumbled back to life. It began with an earthquake swarm, followed by several smaller eruptions. Then came the main event, which remains the largest volcanic eruption in the past 2 million years. So far, in total, about 2,400 cubic miles of material was ejected during this period. By comparison, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington state only ejected 12 cubic miles of material. In addition to their incredible size, supereruptions are also incredibly rare. For example, in the past 10,000 years, there have been more than 500 volcanic eruptions, but none of them were classified as super-eruptions. In fact, there have only been about a dozen super-eruptions in the past 1 million years. So while it's hard to predict exactly when the next one will occur, we do know that it won't be any less catastrophic than the last. As already mentioned, the effects of a super-eruption aren't limited to those living near the volcano itself. Pyroclastic flows and ash may wipe out everything in their path. But global cooling could occur as well. Hot ash and gases thrown into the atmosphere can reflect sunlight and block heat from reaching the Earth's surface. This is particularly true of sulfur dioxide, which forms sulfuric acid in the stratosphere. Sulfuric acid aerosols remain suspended in the atmosphere for months or even years, blocking sunlight and lowering temperatures worldwide. In the case of the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia, temperatures fell nearly 3 degrees Celsius below normal. The good news is that we're able to monitor the world's supervolcanoes closely to help predict when they might erupt again. Satellites constantly monitor their surfaces, and seismographs keep watch for earthquakes that might indicate magma is moving. Even so, scientists can't agree on how dangerous these supervolcanoes really are. At Yellowstone, for example, scientists have been debating for decades whether it's overdue for another eruption. After all, it's been about 650,000 years since the last one. But others argue that it's impossible to tell when a supereruption might occur because they're so rare. All we can do is look at the evidence left behind by previous eruptions and try to piece together what happened and why. One thing is certain, though. If Yellowstone were to erupt today, the devastation would be unlike anything we've ever seen before. It would be the largest volcanic eruption in recorded human history. The initial blast would flatten everything in its path, wiping out major cities along the west coast such as Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco. Most of the American West would become stuck in a volcanic winter with the lingering effects of ash and gas blocking sunlight and lowering temperatures. In fact, the entire United States would experience a volcanic winter, plunging the country into chaos as food shortages and power outages became commonplace. However, despite the danger they pose, supervolcanoes are also fascinating to many people. Some scientists even believe that they played a role in helping life evolve on Earth. It's thought that the massive amounts of ash and gas released during supereruptions led to mass extinctions. However, this also led to a rapid evolution of new species as ecosystems were completely reworked. It's possible that life on Earth wouldn't be the same without them. If you think Yellowstone is scary, then check out Mount Vesuvius in Italy. Home to the city of Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius is one of the most famous volcanoes in history. On September 19, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted violently, burying the nearby city of Pompeii in ash and pumice. In total, the eruption ejected about 4.5 cubic miles of material, killing nearly 2,000 people and destroying 13 Roman cities. Today, millions of tourists visit the area each year to see the ruins of Pompeii and Herculaneum, two cities destroyed by the eruption. But don't worry, Mount Vesuvius is now considered dormant, and there are no signs that it will erupt anytime soon. However, other supervolcanoes are more active than Mount Vesuvius. Take Novarupta in Alaska, for example. Novarupta is located on the eastern edge of the Aleutian Islands and has been relatively quiet in recent history. Its last major eruption occurred in 1912, which was also the second largest eruption of the 20th century. Eruptions like this don't come out of nowhere, though. Prior to the 1912 eruption, there had been numerous earthquakes in the area. Steam explosions were also reported by sailors passing through the Bering Sea. They described seeing steam rising 200 feet into the air, covering the entire horizon. Although the 1912 eruption was truly spectacular, it was fairly short-lived, lasting only about 60 hours. During that time, however, it ejected an estimated 6 cubic miles of material into the air. Fortunately for those living nearby, the nearest human settlement at the time was over 100 miles away. So while the world definitely needs to keep an eye on these potential ticking time bombs, a supereruption is unlikely to occur anytime soon. However, this doesn't mean we shouldn't be prepared for the worst. Authorities should establish clear evacuation routes away from the most active supervolcanoes and educate the public on what to do in case of an emergency. They should also consider establishing a warning system similar to the tornado warning system in the United States. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. Now watch What If Yellowstone Erupted, or check out Deadliest Natural Disasters in History.